Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Driven Wild. Today we are talking about why do DoorDash drivers cancel an order upon arrival at the restaurant. So upon my internet travels, I stumbled upon a very interesting question on Reddit. Why do some Dashers get to the restaurant then cancel? And honestly, this was a much deeper answer than I thought it was going to be, so I decided to make a full video out of it. So with that said, we not only contemplate the pros and cons of having our own subreddit here on the channel, but we are also going over the many answers to the question, why do DoorDash drivers get to the restaurant and then cancel? Also, before I jump into it, I do want to be clear that this is not just DoorDash's, UberEats' Grubhub. This is a lot of different gig apps in the food delivery industry, so keep that in mind. So with that said, let's get started. Wait time. Some drivers have zero tolerance for wait time anymore, especially for lowball offers. I am a personal believer that you never accept an order for less than a high standard, so you never feel as if you should have to cancel for wait time. But there are some drivers that will take lower priced orders, so that way if they want to unassign, they can. Which not only puts their account in danger because they're canceling a lot, but it also makes the customer's order late. Now, there are a significant number of drivers who feel that if the payout is big enough, they could sit through the wait time. But that being said, that has a lot to do with the tip, which I do not believe you should change your tipping habits because you hear me, but we'll get deeper into that towards the end of the video. Parking problems. Some people chose a particular restaurant to order from because they do not want to pay for parking or logistics are an issue for them personally. And because of that, they order on Doordash, UberEats, and Grubhub. That's understandable, but what those people aren't understanding is that we don't want to pay for parking either. So if you're gonna make parking our problem, we're probably just not going to accept the problem to begin with. There's an entire area near here that I cannot go to because the parking popo are just so out of hand with how quickly they ticket people. Now, that being said, we're not afraid to create our own parking and solving that problem on our own in some ways, but if we have no choice but to pay for it, if the parking popo is that quick to ticket people, we're gonna have to unassign because it's gonna dip into our profit margins, which sometimes can be razor thin depending on the market. It's not like the company is compensating us for parking or gas or anything like that, and it doesn't matter what the value of the order is. That order is going to be unassigned, and the restaurant is going to be put on our no-go list. Food theft. Look, some drivers are just not good people, and honestly, for how infrequently it happens, I have to say it still baffles me that people still ruin a good opportunity with theft. Like, seriously, one order completed properly for the amount of money you're making from that one order, you have enough for your own meal that is made the way you actually want it, but instead you steal somebody else's burrito bowl. That doesn't even make any sense. The only thing you can realistically do here is get a refund, try again another day, because people who pull this crap don't really last long on the platform. Store closed unexpectedly. You know, some restaurants people order from are just ran by some of the most fascinating people. People with such a short staffing issue that they can't open, people who had an emergency and needed to close, people who changed their hours for the holidays, and sometimes you have people who have the time management skills of a 5-year-old and can't open their store on time. There's a pizza place near here that is notorious for that. They're more of the pizza place that is open during the late night, like they open in the evening and they stay up until late night for all the bar people, but they can't even open up on time. It's insane. Seriously, the manager is more irresponsible than the drunk people are. But I'll tell you what, this is probably one of the more annoying things for us, because that means we thought we were getting a really good offer because the order was probably declined a fair amount of times, or unassigned a fair amount of times, but because we have to deal with support now, who, by the way, knows that we have these issues but screws with us because they refuse to do their job properly and shut down the store when they know it's an issue. But nevertheless, it's still an issue that us drivers have to deal with, and unfortunately customers have to be on the receiving end of. A better offer. Look, some drivers are not exclusively working for one app. Some are intelligent enough to be signed up for every app. We in the business of the gig economy refer to this as multi-apping, where we have multiple apps active, and we accept the orders that are fiscally responsible enough for us to actually accept. Now, this is great for us because it allows us to take great offers and not just what we are given from whatever platform we're working on, but some drivers like to abuse this method in such an unsavory way, which is expected to a certain degree because when you have a system, you gotta expect people who are trying to game said system. But what some drivers will do is that they'll leave their apps on while they have an order, and if they get a better offer while they're in the middle of your offer, they're going to unassign your offer and go to do the other one, which in my opinion is worse, because if you just follow through with the order you already had, this will reduce your chances of contract violations and keep your account safe long term. But that said, if they use this method, they will do what's best for their wallet, not necessarily what's best for their customer or even their account status, which doesn't make sense. Disrespectful or manipulative workers. This is probably one of the more darker sides of the gig economy, and I take no pleasure in talking about this, but it is a very important point to make. People in the gig economy are often discriminated against simply because of their misplaced feelings about the companies they receive orders from. While you can make the argument, oh, these tech companies are driving business towards them, the cost of these companies are oftentimes unreasonably expensive for the razor-thin profit margins they already are experiencing. Like 30% commission is a lot. Not to mention the manipulative games from support and the companies that are looking for any opportunity to not pay them is frustrating and unjustifiable. And the fact that the cost of doing business from them is so high and that's how they're getting treated is unreasonable as the company to the restaurant. But that being said, that anger is towards the company, not us. I remember picking up an order from an Italian restaurant near here that just hopped on UberEats. They were on it for like 3 weeks. They had some issues with the payment. The first time I went to them, all was good. They were just brand new on UberEats, so they weren't really thinking much about it. Second week, same thing. Third week, where I got another order, they were acting as if they didn't know me, and they treated me like absolute garbage. Like, what the heck is that? But that being said, they canceled their partnership with Uber Eats, and they were just tired of all the games that they were playing with support because they weren't doing their jobs. Look, I understand your anger towards the company. Heck, we have similar feelings as gig workers towards those same companies, but there's no reason to treat the gig workers that are just trying to make a buck like that. And that's not the only example either. McDonald's workers are literally trained to ignore gig workers upon arrival. Like literally, they will avert their eyes and pretend like you don't exist. The amount of times I've seen McDonald's workers literally like pretend they're busy just to ignore you is obscene. It's gotten so bad with McDonald's, DoorDash is starting to charge them more for excessive wait times, which is already 30%. You're going to charge them more than that because you're being an unreasonable piece of garbage. Chick-fil-A is trying to make us confirm that we received an order before they actually give us the order, which is a huge risk to our accounts. And recently I had a restaurant worker who worked at this Mexican restaurant literally look around me to work with the person behind me because they refused to work with me because I was a gig worker. I had to have a talk with the manager on the subject. Now, personally, as a gig worker and as somebody who works with anybody anymore, I refuse to work with people like that in my professional life. I have had it with the disrespect, the posturing, the manipulation. A lot of us got into the gig economy to escape that kind of behavior from bosses who pull that crap, from coworkers who pull that crap. And now you want to act that way towards us because we're doing our jobs, which is nothing to do with you as a person? You're out of your goddamn mind. Nothing against the customer, but a lot of us have zero tolerance for that BS anymore. Micromanagement by the customer. We talked about the toxic environment of certain restaurants. Let's talk about the toxic customers that we sometimes deal with. Some customers order from apps like Doordash, UberEats, and Grubhub and have this undying need to check in on us the moment we get the order. Where are you? Why aren't you here yet? You know I paid for priority, right? Like asking us 1,000 questions isn't going to lead to getting your order faster. In fact, it's probably going to slow us down because we have to answer you in order to get to you. And also, customers like that have a specific profile about them. They're often the customers that tip bait, that leave bad ratings for the smallest thing, cause us to get contract violations we don't deserve, and because that's how the customer acts the moment they get a driver, that's how they will act across the board. Heck, at that point, it's safer for our accounts and our well-being to unassign the order and wait for a better, well-behaved customer than follow through with your order. So do yourself a favor, be patient with your driver, and you'll get your order as quickly as possible. Personal emergency. Look, we can't overlook the idea that sometimes things just come up. There's an emergency the driver needs to tend to. There's a lot of things that happen in the personal lives of the gig worker. Sometimes even on delivery, there are actual things that happen to where we can't complete the order. Like one time I went to a McDonald's, my car got stolen, so I couldn't complete the order for that reason. Is that going to be all the time? No, but it's a possibility. Now, like I said, I wanted to make a quick note about tipping habits in the gig economy. One of the best ways to ensure that the driver will follow through with the order is to have a better tip, and we touched on that. But that doesn't mean you should start tipping better just to get your order delivered faster. I think that you should continue to tip exactly how you planned on tipping in the first place, because character is displayed by the way you tip. How you do something is how you do everything. If you're the type of person that naturally just tips generously, or even just the way you're supposed to at 20% or $5, and then we'll help you. That's literally how we do things. Obviously, some things are going to be a little bit more challenging than others depending on mileage and the actual value of the order. But that being said, we'll most likely follow through if you do that bare minimum. But if you're the type of person that doesn't tip at all, you're also probably the person that rates poorly, causes unreasonable contract violations, and potentially tip bait. Not to mention the micromanaging side, which we already talked about. So please, continue to keep revealing who you are by tipping and behaving exactly the way you normally were, because we're going to keep working with the customers that deserve our help in the first place. But let me ask you a question. Did I miss anything? Is there another reason that we would arrive to a restaurant and then cancel the order on our end that we didn't touch on in this video? Let me know in the comments. Let's make sure that every perspective is heard, is well aware of why we do what we do upon arrival to a restaurant and canceling in the gig economy. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. As always, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace!